welcome to Ringsiders. It's an honour, I say it, and I mean it. It's an honour to have this man back, George Napolitano. How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you, and thank you for asking me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Listen, I know Callum can and I'll tell you the same thing. I'm always I have goosebumps talking to you. I said to
Oh,
Callum, I
come
could speak
on.
to you all night long, and I
George,
truly mean it.
it's the first time I've today that I'm getting to speak with you, and I usually do the editing for the videos. And when I'm
Mhm.
editing, some of the stories that you and Jamie have discussed, I'm like, one of the most interesting guests we've had. Like, you've got a story about everybody and every company and Vince McMahon. You've been there for everything, and I think it's just so cool that we get to speak with you.
All right, thank you. It's been a long time. How's that? Many, many years.
Well, I know I said to you obviously last time we spoke about the territories, and obviously I'm a big fan of the Mid South territory. I know there's a lot of history there, and you spent time there. I mean, what was
Yeah.
your experience there, Mid South?
Well, I went to at some point every territory,
Hmm.
depending on wherever the big match was being held that weekend or that month. And to me it was like a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Wherever the bigger one was happening, it was like the pay-per-view for that month. And in my travels, I went to Mid South. I mean, as well as Florida and Texas and
Hmm.
name it. I was there mostly, almost every one. Mid South, though, honestly, not as many times as the others.
Mm.
I because I would catch some of the Mid South guys in Houston
Yeah.
or in other places. But I like going to New Orleans. That was one of my favorite places, just because the matches were great, and New Orleans being such a different kind of city. It's good to look around, tour, and walk and see
Yeah.
what's going on.
I know Callum's been to New Orleans a couple of times. I've not been yet, but it's on my bucket list. Is New Orleans?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a European city. I mean, it's different than any other city in the United States.
Yeah, it's got its own character. It's very
Yeah,
heavily French influenced, obviously, but
yeah,
it's like no other state in America. Well, sorry, city in America. It's
city. Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah, and a lot of Louisiana is like that. It's back, it's backwards and what have you. But that's how it was. We're talking 30, 40 years ago,
Yeah.
50 maybe. And then it was really different. Now everything is kind of blended in the same.
Yeah.
So, what was obviously talking Mid South as well? I mean,
Okay.
what was your thoughts on Bill Watts? Because you hear a lot of different stories about him. What was your experience being around him?
In the beginning, Bill Watts, before becoming a promoter and owner of Mid South, he was a wrestler. So yeah, and he wrestled in the Northeast. He wrestled for the WWF
Yeah.
against Bruno San Martino. So he knew about magazines, but he was reluctant. He didn't like them so much. But then he realized that I need this coverage so people will know what I'm doing. And he became really, really friendly, really nice. But again, that would be different how he treated me or Bill or some of the other guys that came around than he treated some of the people, fans, press, all that he didn't know. But he was very nice to me. He really was.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and he was very obviously I've done a bit of research on Mid South, and he was very much he wanted to go head to head, didn't he, with Vince? He wanted to rival Vince.
Well, yeah, yes and no. But at that point, you gotta understand there wasn't nothing in their mindset was about rivalry. It was about running my territory. It wasn't about I want to beat Paul Bosch or I want to beat Roy Shire in California. That wasn't their mindset. Their mindset was running their own territory and doing the best that they can do in their own territory, their own area. When I say territory, you know.
So back in the territory days, I'm guessing nobody, like you said, had that mindset of trying to be number one. It was just trying to be number one in their own respective area.
Yes,
And when
that's
Vince,
that's
yeah, when
that's
Vince
as
came
much
along,
as they knew.
yeah. So did what created the shift in Vince McMahon's mind? Do you believe was it that he just wanted to run it all himself? He wanted to combine it all. What created that shift in Vince's mind? Do you think?
I think. See, I could have this a little wrong, but Southwest Championship Wrestling got on cable,
Right.
Mm.
and they seen that this group now was getting out of their own little area and starting to book shows out of their, quote, territory, unquote, and out of their own area. And then the same with TBS. TBS then, their reach was very far because of TBS being a cable station. And Vince seen this. He says, there's something in this, like these people are going past their extended boundaries. I mean, I can do this and I'm going to do this. And that's what really changed him, seeing what others were starting to do.
Yeah, so he thought, right, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And
I can do it better. I can do it, and I can do it better. I have a big city. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. And he went and bought the top guys from every territory, figuring if I get their top guys, the fans who like these people are going to want to see them. They're going to want to see them. The only place they can see them is with me.
I mean, from a business point of view, it's a great move. He was very successful in doing what he wanted to do. Whether or not people agree with it or not, he did it very well.
He did it. He thought it out, and it worked. Yeah. It could have flopped miserably, but he had people behind him, like MTV.
Yeah.
And MTV then was now hitting all over the U.S., and you were seeing music videos and stuff. And then they brought in some wrestling things.
Yeah.
And they got a whole different audience of people who didn't normally like wrestling, the age group that had dropped out of watching wrestling and now coming back and seeing this again. And it opened up their numbers, their sheer numbers of people.
Yeah.
Just because of TV.
Yeah, you mentioned as well, obviously, Vince coming in and taking the top guys and stuff. Yeah. A guy we've not had a chance to talk about, really, was JYD, who was arguing the top guy at the time.
We started with Mid-South, and I know you... Then we went on a tangent. But yes, he saw the popularity of JYD, Junkyard Dog, in the Mid-South. I need a black guy that's gonna bring in more fans, and that's his intent again, JYD. But when I saw JYD, he used to shuck to the ring and use the chain and run, and he was really, really exciting. But the first guy that I kind of remember with the music was a bad Leroy Brown. He would walk to the ring with a boombox on his shoulder, and he would dance around, and he was really popular. And in the song, his big rival was the Junkyard Dog, and that's how it started. And in the song, that the rival was the Junkyard Dog of Leroy Brown.
Leroy Brown. Right.
Yeah, bad Leroy Brown, yeah.
Leroy Brown, nobody talks about Leroy Brown.
No, you're right. He's not a name that I hear a lot of people speak about. Again, I'm familiar with him, but I'd have to go back and Google and watch some stuff. But I am familiar with the name.
Whoa, yeah, I'm just having a look now. I mean, it's someone I'm quite unfamiliar with, but he had a great physique by the looks of it.
Yeah, he was big and big. And then he really walked to the ring before anyone else. He walked to the ring with a boombox on his shoulder, big boombox. And they would then have music blaring over the loudspeakers, which you didn't get other places either. You didn't get music, and the wrestlers were not introduced with music before. Yeah. Now, and that brought the music into the intro, the music intros into wrestling too.
Just a little side tangent before we go back to Mid-South. While we're talking about wrestling and entrance music, you mentioned there was a time where wrestlers didn't have entrance music. How much of a difference do you think it made to a wrestler's overall character when you introduced entrance music? Do you think it really helped for the better?
Well, it did. It just gave it a whole different vibe, and it was a whole different appeal. And they were walking out, they were more colorful. They became more colorful too, and they would dance to the music. And the music enhanced what they did. I mean, go back to the WWE, which we always do. They had their own music. They had their own record album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they didn't want to pay royalties to the music publishers who owned the rights to the songs that they were showing on national TV now. When it was local, you can get away with it. You didn't know what was being played or what was being on.
Yeah, because they had Jim Johnston, didn't they? Was it Jim Johnston?
Mhm. So once it became national, they had to be careful. So then they stopped using people's songs, and they made their own songs.
Right.
And
Okay.
also, they had
Yeah.
to buy the rights. Had to buy the rights to
Yeah.
the song, because now it's a whole different world. Before you can do that, you just would put it on and just run with it, which is what ECW did. I mean, they didn't want to pay nobody.
Yeah.
They did it. But then when a lot of the ECW ones now, it's generic, or you don't really hear the music used to when it was first started in the
Yeah, 'cause
90s.
then Paul Heyman used to use Metallica, didn't he, for the Sandman?
Enter Sandman. Yeah.
Never paid Metallica a dime.
I don't think so. No, but that was the music thing, and
Yeah.
I really remember it first in the Mid-South, to me.
Yeah.
Mid-South. And
Was I think I always thought it was the Freebirds who
the
started with
Freebirds
the
too,
music.
but that was the Freebirds had their own record. Michael Hayes, Bad Street USA, they did their own song out of Atlanta, But that record was done in Texas. That was later. I want to say it was later, a little later than the others. Not much. I mean, they were right in the beginning of having their own song. Nobody else really had their own song, sang their own song, or performed their own song. I think we mentioned that one time at a Texas Stadium show, and I don't remember which one. Right after the Texas Stadium show, Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy and Bam Bam and Buddy Roberts, they had a record release party for their song Bad Street USA, and it was right after a big show at the Texas Stadium. So they had this big thing. And of course I went there with it. And I was with the guy named JJ French, and I forgot what group he was in, but he was a big music guy at the time that was into wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, on a side note as well, I mean, talking about the Freebirds, and you was there. What was it like having a drink with the Freebirds? Because you hear a lot of stories.
Well, they just kept on. They never stopped. But then they became, everybody wanted to. I mean, but the Freebirds, they were a big party group, They did a lot of things. And again, they don't get as much credit as they should for revitalizing tag team wrestling.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I used to see tag team, of course, in the WWF, but it was good, and they had some good teams. But the Freebirds made it team. They were like a team, real team. Hark back to the Valiant brothers when the Valiants had three guys.
They kind of laid the groundwork for any team over two people, like the New Day nowadays. You still hear the term come up, the Freebird rule.
The Freebird rule. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it was. But then again, people forget. It's a long time ago. The Valiant brothers did three guys, and it was Jimmy, Johnny, and Jerry. And Jerry came in when Jimmy was hurt, sick, whatever. And then you didn't see Jimmy Valiant for a bit. But there were three guys. There were three of them. But it's the Freebird that you hear the story that it's a team. But I think the Valiants did it first.
And speaking of, obviously, the Freebirds as well, what was your take on Terry Gordy? Because you hear a lot of people talk about just how good in the ring he was and how underrated. What was your take on Terry?
He was really exceptional. He couldn't do as much as part of the team alone. He was he saw what Brody and guys of that ilk, Stan Hansen, he saw what they were doing in Japan, and he wanted to do the same, but he was too loyal to Buddy and to Michael Hayes to break out on his own. But he did have his own matches at times, just as a change. But he wanted to go to Japan and make a name for himself, and he just said, "These are my friends. These are who I'm with, and this is what I do." And so he didn't get as much credit, for as being a single wrestler as he would have.
Yeah.
And I'll take that 10 years past. I always thought that Road Warrior Hawk, would have been a sensational singles wrestler. I tell you, he would have. His look and his demeanor, he would have been really good at. He would have been. He would have fit right in the mold as a real champion, in my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's a lot of tag teams where you do think both of them, or one of them at least, could have been great singles wrestlers. And like you said, Hawk is one of them. When you look at the Steiners, I mean, they were both obviously great singles wrestlers too. But I've never really thought about Hawk being a singles wrestler. And now you mention it, I'm thinking, yeah, he had every tool that you need.
He had the look, he had the style, the look, he had everything.
Personality as well, didn't he? He was,
Yeah.
I mean, not knocking Animal, but Hawk had the personality.
Oh, he had personality, but as a team, Animal was great. I mean, Animal, but again, Hawk said, but I grew up with them. This is my guy. I really, really can't be a single wrestler. I told him, you should try to go on your own. And that's when Animal got hurt. Yeah. But he went and teamed up with a Japanese guy. And the name escapes me. I got to think about it. Japanese guy. And then they became the Warriors or the Power Warriors in Japan.
Am I right in thinking Hawk did he have a world title match with Ric Flair at one of the pay-per-views?
He had a world title match with Ric Flair, and I want to think it was Philadelphia, and it was on their summer tour. I don't know, what was it called? So I don't think it was Starrcade, or I don't remember, but the tour all around the country. Hawk had a great match against Ric Flair singles, Seeing that's what made me think this guy should be alone. I mean, I was really friendly with Hawk. That's why he used to come to my house a lot. And he did a lot. We were just friendly. We were really, really close. And I told him that.
Sorry, George, carry on.
No. I said, I told him that, but he really was loyal to Animal. He didn't want to break up the team.
I mean, would you class the Road Warriors as the greatest team of all time? To me, they're my number one team of all time.
Well, because again, there was tag teams always, but they made it different. They had a different look. They came into the Freebirds, obviously, but they came and had a different look, and then they were the greatest of that time. How about we say that?
Yeah.
They were the greatest of that time. Greatest tag team, one of the best of all time. I think Bubba will might disagree, but yeah, I would really say they were greatest of all time, but they were definitely the greatest of their time.
Yeah,
like the Valiants were the greatest of their time, and the Freebirds after them, and then Bubba Ray and the Dudleys.
Well,
the Road Warriors.
Yeah, the Dudleys are right up there. I totally agree with that. I'm sure. I know Bubba Ray has said before plenty of times that the Road Warriors were his favourite team, weren't they? So, I mean, I for me, they're the greatest tag team of all time. But just touching off, I know we can move on from Mid-South because it's just fascinating to hear all these stories. You mentioned about Japan as well. I know you've been to Japan a few times. What was it like? What was Stan Hansen like? He's not someone we really spoke about with you before. But you hear that he was as blind as a bat, so to speak.
Yeah, you couldn't see 2 feet in front of him. I mean, but he was much bigger in Japan than he ever was in the U.S. I mean, certainly he was the AWA champion, but that was a different version of Stan Hansen. Stan Hansen was just a big, immense guy for his time, and a rugged, not a wrestler per se, just a brawler. And in Japan, he saw what Abdullah was doing, that Abdullah was running through the crowd and just going crazy, and he said, this is easy, I can do this and knock these people over. And that's how he changed his style in Japan to be like a real brawler. But we'll go back a bunch of years. Stan Hansen was the one who wrestled Bruno Sammartino when Bruno went to the hospital with cracked his 4 vertebrae in his back.
Oh, of course, yes, it was Stan Hansen, yes.
It was Stan Hansen.
Yes.
And that's how he got this reputation as this brawler. But he picked up Bruno instead of holding him, like trying to help him with his back. He picked him up and tossed him, and Bruno's back just went crazy. And aside to that, then while the next match was going on, I get a message from one of the guys in the back, Mr. McMahon Sr. Mr. McMahon wants to see you. So I go back there and he says, George, you got to do us a favor. You got to get Stan Hansen out of the building. So I went, got all my stuff from ringside at Madison Square Garden, and went out the back, and I took Hansen out of the building so that he wouldn't be a riot or a problem,
Wow.
or he wouldn't be able to leave.
This is what I mean by you've got so many interesting stories. Like, if that happened to me, that would be the most interesting thing that's happened in my life. But for you, it's just another story.
Yeah, so I took him out of there, and I took him to the hotel, Howard Johnson, I believe it was, and he dropped the stuff off, and then we went out to eat, and he wanted Mexican food at midnight, and it's not too many places you could find, but there was a place in Greenwich Village that I knew was open all night. And we went, and he said, you really have good Mexican food in New York. This was in the 70s when people didn't really know different Mexican food wasn't that popular in 76, 48, whatever it was, as it came later, But I used to take the guys, I think I mentioned this a year prior, I used to take the three managers and whoever they were managing in the main event, I would take them to the Garden on the day of the show. I would meet them at the hotel, and I would drive Albano, Blassie, and my main man, the Grand Wizard, along with whoever was the fellow who was wrestling, Bruno or Pedro or whoever. I would take them to the Garden that night, and Albano was I think I mentioned this again too. Albano would yell and curse and spit at the people as they shook my car to high heaven, at the light.
Well, that's what I always, when you see, like I've seen videos of Captain Albano stuff and the way he was, his character. Was that what he was really like?
Albano was on. The moment you saw him, he was on. There was no different. He was what he was. Mm-hmm. And obviously at different times he wasn't crazed, but the moment it started, Albano was on from day one. And he drank a lot, that might have contributed to it, but he knew that his character was the way he was. Albano was the way he was.
Yeah. I know, obviously, the drinking and stuff back in the day. And I mentioned to Callum first time we ever spoke about you going out drinking with Ric Flair. I mean, that must have been one hell of a night.
But that wasn't just that night. It was almost every night. Ric Flair would say, "Woo, tonight, the Marriott." and that was it. And then it was the Marriott. And then people would come. The ladies would come and what have you. And it was a whole nother night. It was a whole different thing.
Every night.
Yeah. It wasn't just that night. It was just the way it was.
Wow. I mean, obviously, mentioning the managers as well. I mean, because you've been around them all. So I've got to ask about, I'm sure he's Callum's favourite as well, but Bobby Heenan.
Yeah.
He was really quiet. You can't imagine quiet, but he was quiet and reserved and really mild-mannered and just a real gentleman, really person. He was just, there was no real story with him. He was just a great, fun. He always made sure he had time for you, always talked to everybody. He was just a really overall great guy, really nice.
So funny as well, naturally funny, right? Like, you always hear
just,
how quick-witted he was.
Yeah, that's a quick-witted. Things would just come out of his mouth. He would see something and he can relate to it and say different things. He was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still every now and then I'll still go on YouTube and just watch Bobby Heenan clips just to have a laugh and to cheer me up because he was just so good at what he did.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
You hear a lot of people say he was probably the greatest all-round performer. Would you agree with that?
Well, I've seen so many really great wrestlers. So to me, I'm thinking of great performance. I'm not thinking Bobby Heenan per se, but Bobby Heenan certainly was a great performer on the TV as an announcer. Besides being a wrestler, I mean, as a manager. Well, as a wrestler, he wasn't that good. He was small, and that's when all the guys were big. So by those standards, he was kind of small as a wrestler.
Yeah.
Then he got Blackjack Lanza and Blackjack Mulligan,
Another great tag team.
Great team with Bobby, and then he really took off. I mean, he also managed Nick Bockwinkel.
Yes. Yes. Did he manage Nick in the AWA?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he was in the AWA before the WWF. Yeah. So that was one of the guys that they got. We're going to get Bobby Heenan, who was along with Gene Okerlund, right?
Why do you think Bockwinkel never went with Bobby Heenan to WWF?
Again, he was the champion. So
yeah,
some of those guys felt loyalty. People don't know about loyalty now, but
yeah,
they just felt loyal to where they were, and they were making good money for what they were doing, and being in their own home area. I mean, Flair always said he turned down the WW for many years. He really went because he was loyal. He said I was loyal to the NWA until this day. He still mentions how loyal he was to the NWA.
Yeah, because did Rick start in the AWA as well? Because was he trained by? It was trained by Vern Gagne.
Yes, he was trained by Vern Gagne, and he started in the AWA, and then went to Mid Atlantic for Crockett.
Yeah,
in the same class. A bunch of good people with Flair. I know Buddy Rose.
Was Ken Patera in that class as well?
I actually don't really remember if he was, but there's another guy who was great. He just was a great wrestler and Olympic champion, weightlifter, and really good.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm going to go back to Mid-South because I forgot I wanted to ask you about.
We keep on making a right turn here.
It's fascinating, George. I'll talk about everything with you. I've just thought about Mid-South. Was you there, obviously, when JR was coming in as well? Because I think JR got his start in Mid-South.
Yes, he was. He was, and that was. See, I'm bad with dates. Everything it's a blur. Everything runs into everything else. So I'm bad with dates. I can't actually say when. But JR was the announcer. He was the announcer from Mid-South. Yeah.
Yeah.
And certainly in the 80s, I remember there was a Wrestling Fans International Association, WFIA, and they gave Jim Ross a plaque. I want to say Ms. 84, an announcer of the year, and it was held in Houston, Texas. Was this WFIA event, and Jim Ross was there. That's when I met him.
It says a lot about Jim Ross that. Even back then, he was winning Announcer of the Year in '84. But even now, I know he's a lot older, but he's still delivering a great quality of work. And I think that speaks to how good and important Jim has been to announcing over the years. He's not really lost. I know it's a long time since he started, but he's not really lost that much of a step. He's just changed his style of announcing. And he can still put over people in the ring better than anybody else can. Just by saying a few words, he can make a star. And I think that's his talent, is making stars with his calls.
I think he kind of learned. You don't learn, you hear from Gordon Soley, who to me was phenomenal.
Yep.
Really, really, really very excellent on the mic, and Jim came towards the end of Gordon Soley's tenure, so to say, but not really. He still had more years left in him, but then Jim Ross came on the scene.
Yeah,
Gordon Soley was a great announcer.
Oh yes, yeah. I've listened to a lot of Gordon Soley, and you can see why JR idolizes him, because they're very similar with the fact that Gordon Soley will research and he'll talk about what these guys did in college and university.
He'll give you a backstory and give you more information, which not just what you see black and white on the TV. And it wasn't black and white, but not just what you see. He will give you that backstory.
Yeah,
that's what I love. Back up a bit to the Mid-South. My favorite time in the Mid-South was watching it's on the tip of my tongue and I just lost it. Watching the Sheep Herders against the Fantastics.
Well, I was going to ask you about the Sheep Herders, the Bushwhackers, yeah.
Now that was a crazy, crazy time with the Fantastics and the Sheepherders, and then you had the Midnight Express were there. That was a good tag team territory.
Yeah.
Besides
Yeah.
everything.
And a lot of people don't realize, I mean, obviously talking the sheepheaders who became the bushwhackers, but a lot of people don't realize they were quite a vicious heel tag team.
Yeah. That's the Bushwhacker Luke and Abdullah the Butcher, my two oldest friends. I met them in 1972.
Wow.
Both 72 in a UWF. I'm sorry, it wasn't UWF. It was National Wrestling Federation, NWF, upstate New York. That's where I met them, and I saw the Sheepherders wrestle in Jarry Park in Montreal. Was the Sheepherders was a 4-man tag team, Sheepherders and two others, and I don't remember who. He'll tell me, against Dominic DeNucci. Was the Italian connection. Dominic DeNucci, Dino Bravo, I think one is Martino and Dom. It's on to my tongue. I'm sorry. There were 4 Italians, and that's what kind of made me go. Abdullah says, "You got to come. You got to come." And I went to see Abdullah, but when I heard all these Italians, I'm Italian, who are going to be on this show, and I hadn't seen them all, I made sure to go, and that's where I met Luke the first time. That I was with him, and all through his time in Puerto Rico, which was crazy, crazy time. He was, the Sheepherders were probably the craziest, wildest tag team.
That's it.
Just from what they did.
Yeah. Because that's what always gets me. Like I said, a lot of people just know them as the Bushwhackers, but if people look at the history, there's a hell of a lot more to learn about them than just being the Bushwhackers.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I only really know them as the Bushwhackers. I'll have to look into the Sheepherders a bit.
Yeah, I knew whenever I saw them, I was going to have a cover. I'm going to have a bloody cover for one of my magazines, whether it be with the Fantastic Loan or somebody. I knew it, and they knew it too.
Oh yeah, I highly recommend Callum. You go and look at the Sheepherders.
I'm having a look now. I usually, while I'm talking to like yourself or Carey, while you're talking, I'm Googling the stuff because I'm just fascinated by it. So I'm just having a look at the Sheepherders now. And God, some of these images, I mean, they're in black and white, but you can tell they're quite bloody.
Yeah.
See, to me as well, I love a black and white photo. To me, that's, it just captures me more when you see these bloody black and white photos. They're fantastic. But before we run out of time as well, George. There is one more person I wanted to ask you about. I don't know if you spent much time with him, but I've got his T-shirt on today. One of my all-time favorites, Harley Race. Did you ever spend time with Harley?
As far as spending time with him, no. But I've seen him a bunch of places. But Harley, being a champ, he really didn't stay per se in one particular territory.
Yeah,
he might have stayed in St. Louis and Kansas City. That's where he was from, but he really wasn't in one area that I would see him in all the time. I would catch him around the road, and I even saw Harley in Puerto Rico. I mean, and he was just a really upstanding, great, solid wrestler. That's when NWA wanted wrestlers.
Yeah,
the champion to be a wrestler.
Yeah,
Harley said no.
Yeah, he's one of my all-time favorites.
Hal is one of these guys who just always looked legitimately tough. Like, he just looked like somebody's dad who would beat you up. And, like Arn Anderson, for example, they just look genuinely tough guys.
Yeah. So I knew him, obviously, and he knew me. But I can't say that I had any real connection with Harley, or there's no like story or something that comes to my mind other than him being a tough, really tough SOB, and he was very nice. I mean, as far as that goes, but you knew you were going to get a longer match. You were going to get a wrestling match where you can brawl and you can fight tough. You knew you were in there for 20, 30, 40 minutes for Harley all the time.
Oh yeah, I still watch Harley race matches now. I found one on YouTube not that long ago. Harley race and Terry Funk. It was a 45-minute match, and it just blew me away. It really did.
So that's what I just said. You know, you're going to get a long match, and it's going to be real solid match. But that goes back to the NWA where you had Dory Funk, and then you had Jack Briscoe and Dory, and even Terry was a wrestler at some time until he changed ECWAs.
Yes. But it was quite regular to have 60-minute draws on at the NWA, wasn't it? And
you know, but that's what Flair did too. Flair had a lot of based off of the same mold, the same idea. You had to be a wrestler. The champ had to be a guy who was able to withstand a long time in the ring.
Oh yeah. Well, again, before it cuts off, George, I can't thank you enough. Callum will tell you that I always get excited when you come on because I could listen to you all day long. And
we'll get back to that Mid-South. We'll talk Mid-South.
We will.
We didn't talk about hot stuff, Eddie Gilbert, along with Sting and Steiners, who started in Mid-South.
I did have Eddie Gilbert written down in my notes, actually, because he's someone we've never spoke about. So if I've got time for 1 or 2 minutes quickly, what was Eddie Gilbert like to be around? Because he's a guy that you hear a lot of good stuff about.
I met him first. We first started in the WWF as a young 18, 19, 20 years old young boy who learned wrestling from his father. You know, he learned from his father, who was a wrestler. And he was a very good wrestler in the beginning. And then as wrestling evolved, as the years changed, he became a great manager of Hot Stuff International with Missy Hyatt.
Yeah.
In the Mid-South. And that's where he kind of like changed his direction from being just being a wrestler, a good wrestler, not that big, but being a good wrestler, to being a good talker on the mic, and having Hot Stuff International and Mid-South was a big thing. I want to say it was Missy and Rick Steiner and Sting.
Did he become a booker? Did he book as well? Was Eddie a booker?
Because he was a wrestler. He had a wrestling mind. They said he knew about wrestling, so he became a booker. And he was, if not the first, he was almost the first booker for ECW. Eddie Gilbert was.
Of course, yes, of course he was. Yeah, he's just a guy that I've heard a lot of people like Mick Foley, Steve Austin. They've always had nothing but high praise for Eddie Gilbert, and it's someone that I've never really had a chance to ask about. Yeah,
he was just, and right after the WWF tenure, he went to Puerto Rico to learn, and I met him again there, and we became really friendly, and we stayed friends throughout this whole time. I mean, gone too soon. There's too many people.
Yeah, way too soon. But on that note, George, before we cut out, we would love to get you back in the new year. Obviously, we've spoke to Kerry. We'll get you both on together, which I think will be a fantastic episode.
Whatever you like. Whenever I'm here, they're not knocking down my door. I'm here. I'm alive and well, and going to matches whenever I have a chance. If it's local AEW or WWF local, I'll go. When I say local, I mean anywhere from here to Philly and what have you.
Yeah.
You know? And then if there's something that seems interesting, which this coming weekend is a big wrestling show in Philadelphia and a convention with like 50, 60 people, which is incredible. It's insane, the number of people. It's crazy. It's too many.
So whereabouts is that going to be in Philly, did he say?
It's going to be in the same ECW arena under its new name, which is the same old building.
Oh, fantastic.
And they're having so many of you. I think it's called Icons of Wrestling, and if you check it out.
I'll find it out and put the link in the description.
You'll be amazed at the number of people that are expected to be there, from Ken Patera being one, all the way to today's guys, And Bubba will be there. Bubba on the show itself has a match against Jerry the King Lawler.
Wow. My God. I love the fact that Jerry's still going. I mean, what is he now, 70, 71, and he's still in the ring?
He's got to be.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
Hey, good for him. If that's what he loves, good for him. Good for him. But
Well,
we will get you back, George, after Christmas, New Year, because I tell Callum all the time. I tell you, I could speak to you all night long. I truly could.
thank you very much, and you guys enjoy your holiday.
And you.
Yeah,
Safe
have a great
and
Christmas and New Year, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too, George.
Thank you.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Have a wonderful
Bye, George.
Christmas. Thank you, George
Thank you.
Napolitano.